little things to clear up. Loyola and Cincinnati did play an overtime game in 63. Loyola did win 60-58. They were down 15 in the second half, and they came back and won by a basket. The interesting thing about that game is Cincinnati started 3 black starters, and Loyola started 4 black starters. So 7 of the 10 starters in that game were black. So that and then, as you said, Texas Western in 66, 3 years later, which is interesting. The other thing about that now, I know something about those years because Jucker was the AD at Rollins when I was there from 78 to 82. Because his kid played at Rollins. So he used to tell me all these stories about the Oscar and everything else. Now, he got to Cincinnati right around 60 or 61. I think he coached Oscar in his senior year. Now, Oscar never won a championship. He got to the semifinals. He lost to Ohio State.
Right.
And then I think it was either 1 or 2. Eddie can look it up. I think they beat Ohio State in 61 and won it again in 62 and then lost to Loyola in 63.
Ohio State, you mean?
No, Cincinnati.
Oh, okay.
Ohio State won in 60. I think Cincy beat Ohio State in 61. They won it again in 62 and then lost to Loyola in 63. So I think Cincinnati may have been going for a three-peat in that period with Jucker. It may have only been 1 championship, but I think it was 2. We can have Eddie look up who won the titles. And this is before Wooden. Remember, Wooden hadn't won yet. Right. He won in 1964, his first championship. With Hazard and Gail Goodrich.
Right. You're the one with the photographic memory.
Well, you know, where were you? You playing? Were you in high school?
I was an infant then.
No. You were
60. None of these games were on television, you know.
Yeah, but you love UCLA.
I loved UCLA.
Because you played high school basketball here, right. And when you were playing in 64 to 68, you loved UCLA.
I did. Exactly, and that's when they were winning the national championship every single year with different kinds of teams. Their first national championship team was with all little guys.
Down the floor, yeah.
Then they had Alcindor and Jabbar and of course Walton and all those guys.
Did you see Alcindor play in high school?
No, never saw him play.
Because he's a little earlier than you,
yes.
but you basically the same era, no?
No.
When did you start in high school? 65?
I finished in 67. So he finished in 64 maybe.
So you may have been a freshman when he was a senior.
Yeah. I mean, I saw him play in college, obviously, whenever they were on national television. And he was a legend even then. And, of course, those UCLA teams were just unbelievably good.
You growing up on Long Island, 9th, 10th grade, did you know all about those Power Memorial teams in New York?
No, I really didn't. I knew that Lou Alcindor was a great player, but I didn't know that that Power Memorial was his high school and all of that.
All right, how about in 60 with Roger Brown and with Connie Hawkins? Were you aware of those two?
I was aware of Connie Hawkins because not only of the high school, but in the Rucker League. The Rucker League was a great summertime league, and I actually went to some of those games to watch, Earl Monroe played and,
you did go to
Connie
those
Hawkins. Games? Yeah. And they were played at lots of different places, but these one All-Star game, there was the Rucker League against the Sunny Hill League from Philadelphia, and most of the guys were pros in the game. I mean, Earl Monroe was playing for the Philly team, and all these great players. But Connie Hawkins, of course, was Julius Erving before Julius Erving.
Oh, he definitely was,
yeah.
And he got railroaded with Molinas, and so did Roger Brown, who everybody says may have been better than Hawkins in high school. And Roger Brown got nailed, and he got kicked out of Iowa, and then he joined in the ABA right around the time you played in the ABA for a little while.
That's right. That's exactly right.
All right. Now, did they win 2, Eddie? Do I have that right? Yes. They won 2. Who'd they beat?
They were going for their 3rd.
Okay, so they beat Ohio State in 61. Who'd they beat in 62 in a championship game? So they did, Bobby.
Wow.
So since they won the 2 titles in a row, they went to 3 Final Fours in a row. So, they went to 4 Final Fours in a row. So Oscar went in 60, didn't win. They win in 61, they win in 62, and losing a championship game in 63. That
doesn't ring a bell with me.
That is a period of basketball that nobody knows anything about that.
Yeah.
Cincinnati went to 4 straight Final Fours.
Wow. I didn't realize that. I thought it was 3.
And remember, the 60 Final Four had West with West Virginia and Oscar with Cincinnati, and Cal beat West Virginia in the final, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And as long as you're going there,
that was Pete Newell's team.
Pete Newell was the great coach of Cal.
Right.
And, of course, if you're going there, you start thinking about Maravich, who averaged 44 points a game in college.
Yes,
that
he
was
did.
Without a 3-point shot.
Did you see Maravich playing NIT the one year he came to NIT?
I did.
Oh, did you really?
I absolutely did. Yes, I did. And as a matter of fact, They lost to Georgetown, and there was a guy on Georgetown's team who lives in Jacksonville right now. His name is escaping me at this moment. I can't believe it. He guarded Maravich in that game and held him to like 19
Yeah,
or something.
Maravich didn't play great in that game.
No, he did not play well in that game. And
he averaged 44 points a game that year in college. That was his senior. Or maybe
he averaged 44 his career.
Oh, is it his career? I thought it was that year. It was his career he averaged 44.
Yes.
But a lot of people think, Bob, that playing for his father was the worst thing that ever happened to him, that he really wanted to go to West Virginia to follow in West and Rod Thorne's footsteps.
Yes.
But his old man, who was coaching LSU, he left NC State and went to LSU, convinced him to go to LSU. And a lot of people think that may have been the worst thing he ever did.
Yeah, well,
because he's more of a carnival act than he was a basketball player.
Yeah, and I mean he was unbelievable before his time, and he shot the ball every time, and all that kind of. I mean, we look at Trae Young right now and say, "Geez, this guy dominates everything." I mean, Maravich really dominated everything, and had I mean, they never went deep into the NCAA tournament.
Don't forget, only they had Kentucky,
team.
and they had Kentucky at Issel. They had all those great Kentucky teams. How was he supposed to go in?
That's exactly right.
And you probably saw the famous game between LSU and Kentucky I may have been his senior year. Didn't he score like 55 and Issel scored like 45 and Kentucky won like 111 or 102 or something?
Yeah.
You probably remember that game. That's right up your alley.
Yeah, I do. And Dan Issel, of course, went on to a great career with Denver.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Kentucky Colonels.
Oh, great player.
Yeah, fantastic player. So anyway, that's a long time ago, and it's some different teams and different eras. I mean, now we're talking about 68 teams in the tournament. Back then, you had to win your regular season championship. The only conference that had a postseason conference tournament was the ACC, and there was one year where the ACC had the number 3 team in the nation, Maryland, and they didn't even get to go to the NCAA tournament.
103 to 101, NC State. Was that? Were you there? You were
no.
Year before you got there.
Before
I got there.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, by the time you started to get Duke good, they took more teams, right?
Yes.
It wasn't one, and they moved to 32 teams or 48 teams. They moved to more, so you never played that one and done in the ACC tournament.
No.
Right? They moved it about a year or so before you got there, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. And the tournament, the NCAA tournament had expanded, and we had to, when we went to the finals, we had to beat 1, 2, 3 teams to get to the final. We had to win three games, and so we beat.
You beat Notre Dame in the semifinals.
We beat in the Final Four, but before the Final Four, we beat Rhode Island, and then we beat Villanova and Penn. And that got us to the final. So in those days, you had to win 3 games to get to the Final Four.
And now you got to win 4. You got to win the extra game.
Right.
And that remember, that's the famous Maryland team that would not play in the NIT. Because they lost to North NC State.
I didn't know they didn't play.
And Lefty said, we ain't playing no NIT right after the game. The Leno Moore, Tom McMillan, that was a hell of a team.
Sure.
Was that a double overtime game, too?
I think it was 103-101. I think it was double overtime.
People, no, I didn't see it. Now, you may have seen it, but everybody seems to think that's one of the most
greatest game
That's
ever.
One of the hidden great games in the history of college basketball.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah, definitely true. And by that time, it was on national television. And NC State had David Thompson, who was 6'4",
Burleson,
Tom Burleson, who was 7'4", and Monty Tao, who was 5'4",
little guard,
as their core players.
And you had to recruit against Norman Sloan,
Stormer
indeed. Norman, and I knew him well because when I was working in Orlando, he was coaching Florida.
That's right.
So I used to go up there to see the Florida games and get tape after the game. And I remember one time I had a good relationship with him for some reason. And one time I went up there and I went to his office at 4:00 to do a 20-minute interview with him before the game. And boy, did he hate Dean Smith.
No.
Norm was a tough guy.
Oh yeah.
Hard-nosed guy. He went to Florida, then he left to go to NC State, and he went back to Florida again and finished his career.
That's
was
right.
he a good coach?
Yes, he was a very good coach.
He was a good coach.
He was a great recruiter. I mean, they had a lot of talent.
And they cheated.
I think so. They had a lot of talent. They actually, I know you're the brilliance with baseball. Tim Stoddard, who was a
pitcher for the Orioles. Yeah, he
played basketball and was a starter on that team.
Yeah, I remember. Yes, he was. Yeah, I sure do. But I know that Thompson. They got probation for Thompson.
Yeah,
Thompson
definitely.
was Jordan before Jordan.
Oh my gosh!
Thompson is as good a college player as Jordan was.
Oh yeah,
very similar.
Yeah.
Very, very similar.
Yeah.
High flying above the rim, as dynamic as Jordan was. No, he didn't have the career in the NFL and the NBA, but he was a great college player.
Well, he had a great career in the NBA too. I mean, I think he led the NBA in scoring 2 years. He was in that time where George Irvin and he were the two.
But he wasn't as iconic.
And he had a drug. He had a drug issue.
And he wasn't iconic like Jordan was.
No. Well, there wasn't nobody was making Air Jordan sneakers then.
Right.
Nobody was doing the big marketing thing then. You're just playing. And, I mean, he was an awesome player.
Great. Don't forget, remember that famous dunk when he hit his head? When he came down and hit his head? That may have been the year you got there, 74, 75.
Right before I got there. I went to the championship was in Greensboro. I was there as a coach, for the coaches convention before we went to Duke, watching those games.
When NC State beat Marquette to win the championship.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And they were better than Marquette.
Oh, yeah.
That's when...
and Pittsburgh was in it.
Was Pitt in that Final Four?
Yep.
And NC State...
Billy McKnight.
Billy McKnight. And NC State beat Carolina. They beat
UCLA.
They beat UCLA in what, double overtime? No, they beat them in a classic.
Yeah, it was Walton.
That was Walton's senior year. The only championship he didn't win.
Right. Interesting.
Who's a better college? Kareem's a better college player than Walton is. It's close, but he's better.
Well, I wouldn't argue about that. I mean, Walton was just so fabulous in the Final Four. I mean, he was such a great passer and all that. And at that time, Kareem was a very silent, complex.
You couldn't embrace him.
Right. The public liked Walton better.
Oh, much better. The red hair. And
and hippie and all that stuff,
they got into that. Yeah.
But Kareem was the intellectual and. So, I mean, they were both greatness.
Well, the Walton game that he had against Memphis State, one of the great. What did he score? 43 in the game, missed one shot.
He missed one shot. Yeah. Missed one shot.
And then Gervin almost lost the title against you guys because he was trying to break that damn record. Right or wrong?
That's right.
Shoot, Jack. Score 44.
I was not in charge of the defense that
night. Good line, Bobby. Who was the other assistant for him?
Yeah, he was in charge of the defense.
We take a time out. We continue here on Mad Dog Unleashed.